Alleluia. Om Mani Padme Om. Allah Satnam.
Welcome. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with the Imam of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Association of Victoria, Imam Janud. Last week we were talking and we covered a lot of interesting areas, but what I'd like to be able to do is explore just what does it mean to be an Imam in Victoria for the association. What are the sorts of things that you do?
As an Imam, I believe that my role is twofold. So on one side, I have to deal with, internally in regards to the Ahmadiyya Muslim Association, that's taking care of, the needs of the community. That is basically leading prayers, leading in sermons, taking care of the youth. And I believe, taking care of the youth is an essential part of me being an Imam, and for that matter, being a young Imam.
Yes.
Because I can relate to them in more, in regards to the contemporary issues regarding Islam and also, outside Islam. So within internally, that's essentially the role of an Imam. And another side of an Imam is externally, and that is basically connecting with the communities outside of the Ahmadiyya fold. That is connecting bridges with other communities, that is connecting, making bridges and connections with other religions and other, their representations, and working along the guidelines of, interfaith dialogue, interfaith relations, because that essentially builds up understanding and education, in regards to their religion and also Islam.
Right. That's a fairly big brief. Just coming back to the association itself, one of the key issues, of course, as you said, is the young Muslims and their, I don't want to bring the international side in, but this constant issue with young Muslims going overseas on what's loosely referred to by them as jihad, as we explained last week, is not exactly right. Do you how do you manage that? What's the sort of...
Because Ahmadiyya Muslim Association has such a strong administrative structure and so much emphasis is paid towards youth and their organization, because within Ahmadiyya community there's a separate organization for youth, and a lot of work is done, in regards to their upbringing, in regards to their activities, and in regards to their moral and ethical values. Okay. I believe that if you actually look at Ahmadiyya Muslim community overall, you'll find them to be extremely productive citizens of whatever country they live in. Not only Australia, but if you look at them in America or UK,
yes,
they'll be supportive of their local state, their local government. We have, even in Australia, I have a few friends who are in the army. They're serving in the army right now, currently, and they're part of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Association.
Yes. Yes. Well, see, that activity within the association, just going to the website, that actually spreads across lots of areas, like the humanitarian work. You mentioned earlier, last week actually, about Africa. Africa is one of the centres where you have some considerable activity, isn't it?
Yes, right? Definitely. I personally lived in Africa for 6 months and I saw this activity firsthand. And we have an organization, it's called Humanity First. Through this, we have built hundreds of schools, even secondary schools all over Africa, hundreds of medical centers and hospitals all over Africa. And then we have doctors who are regularly going in from Canada, from UK, from United States, who are devoting, say, 6 months, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years of their life for just serving humanity. So I believe Ahmadiyya community, Ahmadiyya Muslim Association, within the fold of Islam, are the forerunners in providing education to the poor Africa, the Africa which has no education, which has no educational system set up. And Ahmadiyya Muslim Association is providing free education to them. They're providing services of free healthcare to them. And even right now in this day and age where Ebola outbreak is all over West Africa, we still have our medical centers and our medical staff who are volunteers again, who take time out of their lives and they come there and they're still working there in conditions which I don't think so we can even perceive or imagine living in this world.
Right. Your leader, His Holiness, he makes some observation about before you can come out as an imam, you have to go to places like Africa, is that?
Yes, and I think that's at the time, you see the wisdom of this when you actually go through this, because I personally grew up in Australia. I grew up in a world where everything was, in a hand's reach, basically. Everything was right there. But once you go to these countries, you realize what kind of things you take for granted. And
that's right.
I lived in a place where there was no electricity, there was no running water. I had to, pull water out of a well. And when you live in these kind of places, you realize what kind of, things living this world you take for granted day in, day out. And I'll just mention a funny story that once I spent my 6 months there. I lived in a village and I went back to UK. I was in my family's house and I was just so happy for being in a room where I can switch light on and off, with a switch. And my family was like, "What are you doing?" And because I was flicking it on and off, and I told them that, I'm just so happy that I can turn this light on and off, with this switch. And 6 months of Africa did that to me.
Yes.
So imagine, people living there for, many years at a time.
Yes. It sort of introduces a touch of humbleness to recognise that's...
And I think that was one of the main purposes of His Holiness, so that these young imams who are graduating from this theological institute in Canada, they realize that, there's this part of the world as well. We grew up in a world where, these things did not exist. So sometimes that awareness isn't there. And that awareness is only created once you go there and you live there amongst them. And I think that was one of the purposes of His Holiness in sending us there.
Very, very wise thing to do, because for you to have meaning in society, you need to understand every aspect of it. We're out of time, so we'll
Unfortunately.
be back. Yeah. We'll be back. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with the Imam of the Ahmadiyya Association of Victoria, Imam Janud. When you described what your role as an imam was, you mentioned also that there was interfaith work outside. You've only been doing it for a short while, I understand, but what's been happening? What have you done so far?
Well, it's been a busy 2 months, I would say. I've made contacts and gone into the interfaith council meetings of Casey Council.
Yes.
Also, Frankston Council, met with the mayor in regards to this interfaith dialogue. Because I personally, but also the Ahmadiyya Muslim Association overall, we are very big supporters of interfaith dialogue, as this, crushes any barriers that some people might have, or some stereotypes which exist, not only in regards to Islam, but also other religions. So we've had a few meetings in that regard. And also we have started regular tours of various colleges who are coming into the Ahmadiyya Muslim Mosque. And, there's a small lecture that is given to them in regards to what essentially Islam is and what defines a Muslim. So that is, the feedback from that has been very good, and the staff is very happy that, these children, they're not only just seeing, the side that they see on media, but they're also getting hands-on experience to what Islam really is. So a lot of these kind of activities have been going on, and a lot of them are in the pipeline for future events.
Yes.
Just recently, we had a huge symposium in regards to serving humanity. And we had, a number of MPs coming out, a number of, mayors coming out, politicians coming out, amongst other, local communities. So myself, but also the Ahmadiyya Muslim Association, we're always busy in these kind of interfaith dialogues and events and symposiums.
So His Holiness, what does he have to say about that? Is that part of a major thrust for him? I imagine it would be.
It would be, and before I got appointed here, I actually met him. He graciously I had the chance of graciously being in his presence, and he emphasized on this point of community building, because as an Islam, as a Muslim, one of the most fundamental things you learn from Islam is serving humanity, serving your neighbors. I mean, so many rights are for your neighbors that a person, for example, cannot sell his property without the permission of his neighbor. So he emphasized on this, that make sure that you mingle with the local communities, you connect with them, and they see this side of Islam. Because essentially, when they see this side of Islam, they'll automatically be attracted to something that is so pure, something that is, that vouches so much for humanity.
Yes.
So he highly emphasized on this point, to connect with the local communities and invite them to your mosques, and go to events of interfaith related events.
Yeah, so it's really a defined role for you as an Ahmadiyya Imam to do that.
Definitely, it is.
Yeah. What's been your impression of the interfaith community? Don't insult anybody, please, but what's been your impression of it? Like the tensions or the growths or the opportunities? My
impression actually has been, I'm actually extremely surprised, because I did not know that such a thing existed in Victoria. So I'm actually not sure if South Australia has something like that, but I did not know at all that such a vast and administratively quite well organized committees existed within each council. So I was very happy that these interfaith meetings are very they happen regularly.
Yes.
And they're regularly holding tours to other people's mosques, temples, and so on. So I was actually very surprised and very happy that such kind of work is actually going on within Victoria.
Yes, they're particularly well organised. It's since the World Parliament of Religions met here some 5 years ago, I think it was, and it's grown from there. But it is fairly strong. From your time in Canada with other people from other areas, have you been able to make a comparison? Like, it surprised you that they were so strong here? Had you experienced any community, say, around Canada that was doing that sort of work?
Definitely in Canada, because since I spent such a huge part of my life, 7.5 years in Canada, I was again involved over there as well. And like I said, I was extremely happy because I did not realize, or I did not know, that Victoria had such a, such importance was paid towards interfaith, because Canada and Toronto, being such a huge city, it's quite multicultural. Yes. And Ahmadiyya Muslim Association, just like over here in Toronto as well, they pay huge amount of emphasis on interfaith relations and dialogues and community building. And I'll just give you guys one example. Over there, yearly, we hold an event in the city of Vaughan, in the council of Vaughan, and we organize a marathon, and it's called Run for Vaughan Marathon. And so far, we've raised millions of dollars for the local hospital, which is to be built in Vaughan. So these kind of activities, Ahmadiyya Muslim Association all around the world, not only confined to Australia, Canada, or UK, we're always giving back to humanity, which essentially is the teachings of Islam. Yes, yes, indeed. And just taking it to the other extent, and I don't know how this would happen, but say Africa, say Liberia, where you spent that 6 months, is there any activity like that there? Because there'd be animist religions, but there'd be Islam as well there, Christianity. Is there any interface that you get involved with as Ahmadiyya? The Ahmadiyya Muslim Imams over there, they're very closely involved with their fellow Catholic or fellow Christian ministers or missionaries. Right. And also not only, with missionaries who are coming from overseas, but also local missionaries and local religions and locally what they hold to be holy and sacred. Because it's not only about, Christianity or Islam, it's about, again, what humanity generally represents.
That's exactly right.
Definitely. So over there as well, a lot of activity in regards to interfaith. Of course, it's not at the level that it is as it is in Victoria, or for that matter, anywhere else. But that's more because of lack of resources that are available, lack of infrastructure that is available over there.
We won't run out of a resource. We're out of time. We'll be back in a moment. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with the Imam of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Association of Victoria, Imam Janud. Now, before you can practice as an Imam, you were saying that you have to do a thesis. What was yours?
So, as I mentioned earlier, in the 7-year program, your final year you spend working and researching your thesis. And only after completing this dissertation can you pass, that institution, can you pass from that institution and become an Imam. So mine, I've always been interested with Christianity, with early Christianity, with what Jesus, peace be upon him, represented, and the modern Christianity. And I always, wondered that what Jesus, peace be upon him, would feel like if he went to a church on Sunday, or if he saw the cross and him hanging on there. So in that regards, I, looked into and researched modern Christianity and how it came to be and its existence, and compared that with Jesus and his life and what he was all about.
And you carried that through in fact, one of the triggers for you was the life of Muhammad in reading that.
Of course.
And you've alluded to it a couple of times, and the parallel, Jesus is always accepted generally, not generally, specifically, as a man of the greatest peace,
Yes,
known.
he is.
There are a few stories about Muhammad which corroborate the same thing. Muhammad was a man of peace.
Definitely. And, looking at the larger picture, I believe essentially all prophets who have come, they were they were champions of peace. Because if you look at them, the one thing they have in common, other than, worship of God or realizing the existence of God, one thing they all had in common was persecution.
Yes.
They all faced atrocities which perhaps we cannot even, begin to comprehend. So, with keeping that in mind, we are very well aware of what Jesus, peace be upon him, went through on the cross and even before that. So likewise, Muhammad, peace be upon him, was not any different. He suffered great atrocities at the hands of, his relatives, his fellow people, and, even during wars or even, at a time of peace, he would not have, it has been reported that his wife said, much later on, that we never had sufficient food for more than 2 days. We would only have, meal for 1 day, and we would not have food for, another 2 days. We would not know when we would get our next meal. So in that regards, one specific incident comes to mind where Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he traveled afar to this village just to give them the message of God. Nothing else. All he went there was, to make them realize that there is this one God towards whom, they should worship, and realize that there will be a day of accountability where they will be held accountable for their actions. And in return, they persecuted him. They stoned him so much that it has been reported that his shoes were filled with blood. And upon this, he took refuge in a garden, and an angel came to him, and he said, for the atrocities that these people have, inflicted on you, would you like me to, crush them between these two mountains? And Muhammad, peace be upon him, he replied that no, because my job is to convey the message, and I am sure that amongst the progeny of these people, there will there will be a people who will believe in God. And that essentially happened at the end. All of Arabia became believers in God. They became Muslims.
Yes.
Then another incident that comes to mind is when Muhammad, peace be upon him, went back to Makkah. As we know that he migrated from Makkah, his birth city, his hometown, and he migrated in a state where, his wife had been killed, his uncle had been, killed due to the atrocities of the Makkans. So much so his grandchildren, one of his grandchild had been killed by the Makkans, amongst other many relatives and many friends, close friends that had been killed in wars that were waged by the Makkans. So eventually, he suffered this 13 years of persecution, so much so that, he could not take it anymore and he had to migrate. He left them alone. And eventually when he does come back to Makkah as a conqueror with 10,000 followers, Makkans thought that today Muhammad will take revenge for those 13 years, or for that matter, longer than that. And he came and he said that, what should I do with you? And one of the Makkans stood up and he said, you should treat us the same way Jacob treated his brothers, and he forgave them for they had put him down in the well, and that incident everyone's aware of. And to this, Muhammad, he forgave them all. But this in fact was something greater than what Jacob had done. Jacob forgave his blood brothers, but Muhammad forgave his enemies, these people who had been the cause of killing so many of his family and close friends. So in that, when we put all of this into perspective, we see that no one prophet is, can claim that, he suffered the most. All prophets, for the cause of God, and because of that humanity and sincerity they have within them, they go through great deals of persecution, great deals of atrocities. And Muhammad, peace be upon him, was not new to that. Jesus, peace be upon him, was not new to that. And nor was any other prophet. And in return, we always see a response of compassion, a response of mercifulness, a response of forgiveness. And this is something that we find, in every single prophet, other than, that one should worship and the existence of God.
Thanks so much for that. And we're, of course, coming to the end of the program. Time is running out for us. Thanks so much for coming in. And I anticipate that, and would appreciate, is as you settle more into your role, if we could interview again and just see how the interfaith's going and how the building of the Ahmadiyya in Victoria is going. Would you be willing to do that?
Of course, first of all, it's a pleasure being here. I'm truly honored for being here. And secondly, I would love to come back anytime. It'd be my pleasure and be an honor to come back here.
Thank you very much.
All right.
You've been watching Harmony and Diversity. We'll be back next week. Bye for now.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om, Allahu